For several years, as the head of payments at Facebook, I would go to the preeminent payments conference, Money 2020, with a male colleague of mine who was the head of partnerships. Something really interesting happened. Before I would give the keynote speech, we would walk the show floor and meet potential partners. What I noticed was we would greet them, introduce ourselves, and very slowly it went from a three-way conversation to a two-way conversation where I was edged out and standing aside. It always felt a little awkward, but I didn't want to say anything or make it, difficult for everybody else. I was telling this story to the women in product in New York City chapter leads when we were having dinner. And we all shared stories of how often people assumed that we were not the leader because we didn't look like it, because we were the woman. We would stand meekly by and let people kind of stomp all over us. And, we would not say anything because we didn't want to be impolite. And then we said, you know what? We're tired of people assuming we're not the leaders. We decided we're going to speak up every time it happens, and we're going to make it awkward. We decided to take back our power. When you think of the word power, when I say women and power, what's your reaction? What are your feelings? The truth is we're really uncomfortable with the idea of women who seek power. Women are supposed to be polite, allow power to come to them, not seek it out. There was a 2010 study where they actually showed the bio of a state senator for a man and a woman. All they did was change the gender and the name. And when people read a biography of a power-seeking state senator who's a man, they thought he was somebody that it was very appealing, somebody they would vote for, and they saw him favorably. But for the woman, with the exact same words other than gender and name, they said it evoked feelings of moral outrage, and she was seen extremely negatively. Even though two people are the same, when it comes to women and power, it just doesn't sit right with us. And yet, if you think about the definition of power, the ability to affect the things around you, it seems innocuous, almost simple. Why is that? I remember the first time I felt truly powerless. When I was 8, my mom told me that my sister and I were lucky that our father was content having only girls. I was really baffled. Only? I asked. I knew I wanted daughters someday, and so I didn't understand why anyone would think that that prospect would disappoint them. But then I realized that every single one of his 7 living siblings had a son to carry on their family name. But my father only had us. This was the first time I realized being only a girl was not good enough. Until that moment, it had never occurred to me that being a girl was second best. And because of my gender, my father would never have something that all Chinese fathers deeply wanted. I felt powerless, frustrated at the unfairness of that situation. I didn't choose my gender. There was no fixing it, no matter how I tried. Interestingly enough, my father never said anything to us, never said he wanted a boy, and he never said that we were a disappointment. But it always sat in the back of my mind since that maybe he was not having something that he wanted in his life. But that's what taught me that sense of powerlessness. And so as I go forward from here, I'll give you some tips to take back your power, to say, hey, we understand that the level playing field is not there. And yet this is an opportunity for us when we have the opportunity to take the power we do have and change the future. The truth is, life is unfair, and anyone who says otherwise is just not telling you the truth. I mean, we live in a world where for every 100 men promoted or hired into management, only 86 women are. We live in a world where only 20% of the Russell 3000 company board seats belong to women, where women earn 6 out of 10 degrees in colleges and yet still make less money when they get out, where women ask for raises as much as men, but they're 25% less likely to get them. We can pretend the world is fair. We can assume the circumstances will be different for us. And I lived under all of those same circumstances through school. Then slowly, I began to see the pitfalls, the traps, the issues that were all around me long after I'd stepped into them. I say these stats to disappoint you, upset you, and frustrate you, but also to inspire you to push against them, to push back on these boundaries, to speak up even when it's uncomfortable, to help us take back our power together. One of the ways to take back your power is to chart your own course. My friend Sun Yin Sang long called herself the girl with the plan. She graduated the valedictorian of her high school. She won the most prestigious scholarship to Duke University, our alma mater. From a young age, she knew she wanted to be a doctor, and she worked relentlessly towards that goal. But during her junior year, something happened. Because of her slipping grades, she lost her scholarship, and she knew she could never be a doctor. Now the girl with a plan had to come up with a different one. Overnight, her dreams disappeared, and she had to write the next chapter of her story, not knowing where to go. This led her eventually to go back to Duke and get her MBA, where she became the head of the Coach K Center she created at the Duke Fuqua Business School. Today, Sun Yin coaches CEOs, well-known athletes, generals. She has over 1 million followers on LinkedIn who learned from her experience. This is all possible because she took a stumbling block, something that could have crushed her when she was 21, and she turned it into the stepping stone for her success today. The truth is, we're always going to fail at one point or another. The only decision we get to make is what to do with that failure. Career paths are not linear. They always will take detours. There's failures, there's obstacles. So even if your ultimate goal and your dream is no longer possible, you get to decide what to do from there. In many ways, the greatest failure of Sun Yin's life turned into the best thing that ever happened to her. She traded her original dream for a new one. And rather than despair, she chose freedom. The truth is, setbacks and frustrations are inevitable. There are moments where you're going to reach a dead end, but just on the other side might be the new opportunity. I interviewed over 24 women for my book, and what I learned from them is that what is different is not that they didn't face obstacles, but what they chose to do with them to overcome them. When many women get stuck the first time they fail, but rather than letting your first no turn into the end of the road, see it as the start of something new and beautiful. The moment you hit that wall might be the impetus you need to change direction and be the jumping off point for something new and precious. The second tip that I have here is to not give yourself a free pass. The concept of a free pass actually came from Carol Izazaki, a well-known Silicon Valley executive coach and leadership trainer. A free pass is the act of giving ourselves permission to actually give away our power when we need it most. There's an old adage, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, and that's the heart of the free pass. When you let go of the ball, you don't grab it and take the shot, that's what a free pass is. Carol jokes that this is what she calls unintended, ridiculous strategies. No one shows up to a meeting and says, hey, I'm going to add no value in this meeting. They don't walk before they walk into the room. They say, I'm going to suck all the joy out of this room. That's not what they say. But you know, how many times did you walk out of a meeting having never said anything or not adding any value or sitting quietly? By giving yourself a free pass, that's what you're intending to do, whether you decide to ahead of time or not. How many times have you just not raised your idea because maybe people would judge you? Or how many times did you not ask for that raise or promotion? Or how many times did you let that colleague interrupt you and chose not to speak up? Each time you do one of those things, you give up your power by giving yourself permission not to take the shot. You are taking the free pass and allowing it to take away your power. Carol learned this the hard way as a really shy person and a perfectionist. She assumed that 100% of words mattered, and so she was really careful to get every word right. And then later she found out something interesting. She saw research that only 7% of what people perceive when you communicate is from the words. There was a professor many decades ago who did a study on this, that when you convey feelings or attitudes, the words are only 7%, but 55% comes from your body language and 38% from your tone. This prompted Carol to learn to speak up, to be brave, to get it wrong even if she had to, and to do it with a passion that she had hidden so long because she was afraid of getting it wrong. That's how she chose to take back her power. Another way is to build a learning mindset. You know, sometimes we think we have to be the expert, the best person in the room, the smartest, the person who's always right. When I started my career and throughout my career, I have always been the imposter. I actually stumbled into product management. I know it's funny now, many years later, but I walked up to a table at a career fair at Stanford GSB for PayPal, a company I long admired. It was a startup with a few hundred employees. I had no idea what I was getting into. When I went up to Tim Wenzel, I said, hey, I just love PayPal. And he said, do you want to interview? And I said, no, actually, I'm heading back to North Carolina. And he said, why don't you just come see our office? And by the way, I have jobs in product and marketing. Which one do you want to do? I turned to the person sitting next to him who I recognized from the year before, and I said, what do you do? And Catherine Wu said, I'm in product. And I said, that sounds great. And I started interviewing for a job where I had no idea what was expected of me. I showed up on the first day and I had to admit to the vice president I worked for that I didn't even know what the job entailed. And she taught me day by day to be who I am today. In less than 2 weeks, PayPal announced it was actually being bought by eBay. And my manager left subsequently. Amy trusted me, someone with very little management experience and very little work experience, to actually eventually lead the product team for eBay. I knew very little about what we were doing. This was the largest line of business at PayPal, and I was terrified. 26 years old, no management experience, little experience altogether. I felt like an imposter every single day. And what she did was she taught me, and she trusted me, and she gave me the opportunity. And I knew I couldn't get it wrong. And so instead, I said, you know what? I am not going to be the expert. I don't know how to do this, but I am going to work hard, and I'm going to learn faster than everybody else. Many years later, in 2020, I was approached to interview for a public company CEO position, and we were days away from pandemic lockdown. Jim Citrin, a well-known Silicon Valley recruiter, said that he thought I'd be perfect to interview for this job. As we were discussing this opportunity at dinner, I asked him, why me? And his response surprised me. He said, why not you? I really didn't know how to reply. He was a respected Silicon Valley leader telling me something was possible that I never thought was. And he said, every single CEO had to get their first CEO job at some point. This is your chance. You know, I paused and thought about it, and I decided to apply. It was a grueling process, and I learned so much about myself and what boards were looking for in a new CEO. And though I was turned down for that opportunity, Jim's encouragement showed me that I had gotten to the mindset that I wasn't good enough, that because I am not what a CEO looks like, that I wasn't qualified to do the job. By the time the role of the CEO of Ancestry came along and they reached out, I was ready. And I knew that that was something I wanted to throw my hat in the ring on. And that's something I've been doing for the past year, being the CEO of a company that I love. I would never have done that had I not had the learning mindset and said, hey, maybe he's right. Why not me? That is how I took back my power. Finally, you cannot have a successful career without balance at home. You know, Sheryl Sandberg says the most important career choice you'll ever make is who you choose to marry. And she is absolutely right. I met my husband when I was 18. It was my first weekend as a freshman at Duke. And a childhood friend of mine invited me to his church. And that's when I met David. 5 years of dating, half of which were long distance, showed it and has brought us here today. After 20 years of marriage, 3 kids, 4 moves, we learned that a successful relationship and marriage is a partnership. And it can support 2 careers and a family if you do it right. Taking power back in the workplace means not having to work the second shift, not coming home and having to manage a second job where you manage your household and your family as well. Having a partner who's supportive is incredibly important, but something we ignore often. When we were dating, we attended a marriage seminar and we did a survey where we talked about our habits, what we wanted to do in our lives together. And I realized something, which is most people get married with a survey that's without even asking questions that they would even, the survey that we did to get matched with our freshman roommates. It was realized so much of our success as women are tied to our partners, and yet it's something that we don't think that much about. But imagine that there's 2 women in the middle of their careers who have children. One is making dinner, juggling the kids' schedules, handling all the chores, and another has a swim lane marriage where you are co-equals, where neither one of you are managing each other, where you're not reminding each other. We put this in practice from the start, and it has been the best thing for our career. Because once you fall into a pattern at home, it's really hard to break. So being intentional and thoughtful about how you set up your marriage is important at how you actually evolve your career over time. Without his support, I would never be here today. And behind all powerful women are partners who provide the stability and support they need to thrive. Success for women in the workplace is equal parts luck, motivation, and execution. Life gives us different opportunities, challenges, and raw talents, and we can allow our experiences to be setbacks and hindrance, or they can turn into fuel to take us further than we ever thought we could go. Life is not fair. The playing field is not level. The second shift exists, and the power imbalance between men and women is going to exist whether we like it or not. You will be interrupted, passed over, turned down. But in every challenge, there is an opportunity. The trail you walk might be rockier than those around you, but it's yours to blaze. Your journey may have obstacles and stumbling blocks, but you have the strength to overcome them. You don't get to decide what happens to you in life, but you get to decide what you choose to do in response. I hope you remember that while you can't change everything, you have way more power than you think. You can and should affect the events around you. You have allies, opportunities, and you have a difference to make in our world.